I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to speak to these various groups, and especially the brand new SIG that's been formed at EMAC for service, and I'm very thrilled that that's happening. I want to give special thanks, first of all, to my partner in crime, Minghui Huang. Probably literally most of the research that I'm going to be talking about today was with Minghui. And so I definitely want to give her top billing, and she deserves it. But also I want to thank some additional co-authors who I've worked with, Kalinda Yukonwa, Tuksong Chung, Michelle Lettle, Kelly Hewitt, Bill Rand, Harold Van Herde, Max Maximovich, Tim Chabuk, Saurabh Mishra, Andrew Stephen, and Jillian Brooks. They've been co-authors on some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today. So here's what I'm going to do. I basically have a tremendous number of slides. I don't know whether I'm going to get through them or not, but I'm going to try to go through them quickly, because the goal here is that I want to give you the forest and not just the trees. So this is going to be a tour of my research. I'm focusing on my own research here, but it's particularly the research that relates technology and AI to service. And I want to show how a coherent worldview comes out of this. And I think that it's always important for a researcher to have a worldview that ties together what the researcher does. And I've certainly tried to do that in my career. And then discuss some implications in emerging topics. So let's start off with a paper that we published in Marketing Science in 2014, the Service Revolution and the Transformation in Marketing Science. So I think it gives a really good overview of why the service revolution is so important. And if you take a look at what has been happening, first of all, employment in service in 1900 in the United States was only about 30%. Even by the mid-century, 1950, it was only up to 62%. Today, it's more like 80%. And this has been a steadily growing trend. Here we see the employment in service, which is red, versus goods, which is blue. And you can see this is going back to 1950. We could take it all the way back to 1900 or 1890 if we wanted to, and the graph would look pretty much the same. And the graph stops here at 2002, but I could extend it out and it looks just the same out to 2022. So basically, this is a continuing trend that's been going on for well over 100 years, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. And I'm going to say why that is. Well, first of all, taking a look at the service sector as percent of GDP, you can see that in most of the developed world, it's up at least 70% or more. China is a laggard at this point, but working very, very hard to catch up. So why is this happening? It is technology that's creating the move to service. I'm going to argue this, that technology deepens relationships, and that's the main reason. There are three things that technology does to deepen relationships. Every one of these has been something that has advanced dramatically in recent years. Communicating with customers. So for example, 20 years ago, you didn't have smartphones. Storing customer data, we call it big data now, because it usually is really, really big. You got all this individual customer data. And that the storage of data is so much greater than it ever has been. And there are various laws that have been proposed to discuss how rapidly the data storage increases. And then the other thing that is increasing is the analysis of customer information. And the processing speeds are much, much, much faster than ever before. And so communicating with customers, storing customer data, and analyzing customer information, all of these things are deepening the relationship with customers. As we get a deeper relationship with customers, then the service sector expands. So here's sort of how we used to look at it. We used to look at things as sort of a product scenario. We have some sort of standardized product that we send out to the customers, and then we get some sort of aggregate information back, usually sales numbers. And then we might say, well, the sales numbers aren't good enough, let's change the product. That's sort of how marketing has worked in the past. But the service scenario is a little different. Here, suddenly we have an ongoing relationship with the customer for those reasons that I talked about, the ability to communicate, store, and analyze customer information. So you have a customer indicating needs and requirements to the company. The company then responds with what it hopes is more or less personalized service. But then here's the interesting part. This is no longer aggregate. This is individualized. So we can measure the individualized behavior and response. And based on that, we change the service again to try to personalize better. And this keeps going on and on. So time-wise, we're moving to the right here, and we're seeing what the customer is doing, how the customer is responding to our actions, and therefore we're changing our actions in response. So now I'm going to show you an approach that actually does that. And this is called adaptive personalization systems. I'm going to really discuss in very briefly, I'm going to discuss two articles. One was in Marketing Science in 2009, and one was in JAMS in 2016. The JAMS one was fortunate enough to win their Best Article Award. So let me talk about adaptive personalization systems and how that's taking that worldview that relates to relationships and using it. So first of all, we note that mobile devices are increasingly important. More than 5 billion devices in operation. I imagine it's 6 billion since I wrote this. And consumers increasingly using them for just about everything. So, we know that it's a smartphone world at this point. That's what people are trying to use. And if we look at some of the things that can be done on the device, I mean, there are many things. It's almost infinite number of things. But one thing is music downloading. Okay, music downloading went from $90 million worth in 2003 to over $2 billion in 2019, and it's no doubt much bigger even than that now. And music streaming is even bigger. For example, Spotify did $1.67 billion in business in 2019. Sirius XM, $2 billion in 1 quarter in 2019. So this is a very big market. So what we want to talk about in our paper is how do we take that music streaming and make it better? So what do we download and how do we manage the song list? Those are the issues. So the way things currently typically work is listeners will select songs to download, or the system tries to pick songs the listener will like. A Pandora, for example, if you have the U2 channel, they'll play a whole bunch of stuff that sounds like U2. The downloaded songs are played by request, or you can put them in some sort of random shuffle. But the problem is the listener doesn't know about all the songs. And so if they want to try to find out what new good songs are, that requires a lot of effort on the part of the customer. So what we're trying to do is build an approach that recommends songs to listeners and then automatically downloads the songs that the listener might like. And so there are some existing methodologies that are somewhat similar to this. One is recommendation systems, and these are systems that make predictions of things that you might like, and then it presents you with options. But again, the customer has to choose. And then there's collaborative filtering systems, and this involves using other customers to make predictions about what this particular customer will want. So this new generation of systems is adaptive personalization systems. And what this does is it minimizes proactive user input. The whole idea is to make it easy. Then it's also based on purchase or usage data. So in other words, it's data driven. And it learns the user tastes over time. So it's a learning model. It's a machine learning approach. Okay, so our adaptive personalization system for digital audio players, we started off with playlists generated based on the listening behavior that people have experienced in the past. So, if we're on the device and we see that they've listened to particular things, that gives us information. Then we have an adaptive learning algorithm that learns to taste better and better over time. And we combine that with a recommendation agent and collaborative personalization. So in other words, we are using other people's information to help us. So, and this actually is implemented. It works in real time. It's scalable. It's parallelizable. And so it sequentially designs our playlists, and it also facilitates surprise. Because one of the things that we discover is that you can't just give people what we know they want, because then you won't explore everything that they might want. So what we have to do is some percentage of the time, we have to give them things that are basically random, and just to see how they respond to it. Because, for example, if somebody's on the U2 channel on Pandora, but really they like jazz too, you would never know. You would never find out about that. So ideally, what the system should do is occasionally it should throw out a jazz thing, see whether somebody likes it. So in conclusion, we proposed an adaptive personalization system that's based on usage data. It's a hybrid agent and collaborative personalization approach. So it's not just looking at the individual's data, it's looking at other people's data too. It zooms in on users' tastes over time, yet it also ensures surprise. And what we found out was in our pilot application, it performed very well. So the second application that we did, this was in the JAMS article, this was in mobile news. And what we discovered, what we did differently in the mobile news case was we also used people's social networks as additional information. So what we discovered in building this adaptive personalization was that the reading of the personalized articles increases every cycle, which is what we would expect. If we're not doing a better job of serving the customer over time, then that wouldn't be true. Then 8% of the articles are recommended based on the social network that the person was in, and those are read at a higher percentage rate. So in other words, the social network actually improves the performance. So if we know something about the individual social network, we can actually do a better job of feeding them products that they like. And the personalized articles are read at a higher rate than those from preferred news categories. So for example, one of the things that typically is done online is they will ask you to customize your desired material. So in other words, what news do you want? Do you want news about Taiwan? Do you want news about Europe? What do you want? But what we found is that actually our system is able to do a better job of giving people what they want than even giving people the categories that they say they wanted. So this says to me that asking customers to customize their own service is not as effective as letting an algorithm do it. So conclusions, adaptive personalization produces a better product over time. Adaptive personalization may work better than self-customization. That's our clear finding. And then using the social network can improve performance. So, as you've seen, this is not the adaptive personalization approach that we used actually used Bayesian models for machine learning rather than the deep learning neural networks that are commonly in play today. But but it is artificial intelligence. And what I'd like to talk about is artificial intelligence, because that's the next big thing. And AI is automatic methods that seek to meet or exceed human intelligence capabilities. AI is not limited to machine learning. This is a common error that people make. Machine learning isn't the whole world of AI. For example, there's natural language processing. There are Bayesian methods, et cetera. There are lots of approaches to artificial intelligence that don't involve machine learning and don't involve deep learning neural nets in particular. Okay, so now I want to show you an AI application. This is one that's another AI application. This is one that's using natural language processing. So this is And you can see the co-authors listed there. And this is real-time brand reputation tracking using social media. This was published in the Journal of Marketing in 2021. And the problem is, how is the brand being perceived? And can we track that in real time? And can we get information granular enough to guide strategy? So for example, there are a lot of these companies come out with these brand ratings. And you can say, oh, your brand is worth, this many $1 billion or whatever. But that doesn't really tell you what to do. And so what we want to do is narrow it down and make it more granular, and then try to prove financial impact from what we do. So there are many existing brand measures. Interbrand has one, Forbes, Cantor Millward Brown has one, Y&R, BAV, the brand index from YouGov. So there are lots of these, but they have some limitations. Mostly these things are at the aggregate level. Mostly they're survey-based, and most are available only annually. And they're not granular enough to drive decisions on investments. So what we want to do is try to create a method that does a little bit better job of that. So our approach is to mine social media for brand perceptions. This enables real-time brand tracking. And it also will be granular enough to provide actionable strategic guidance, because we're going to base it on a well-known and widely used theoretical framework, and also demonstrate financial impact. So the framework that we use is the Rush, Seidhamel, Lemon customer equity framework that we write about in 2 books and a whole bunch of articles. The drivers that we look at are brand equity, which is, I think of it as the customer's heart, their feelings, their subjective feelings about the brand. Value equity, which I like to think of as the customer's head. This is their objective viewpoint about the attributes of the company and the brand. And then there's relationship equity, which really has to do with switching costs created by deep customer relationships with the company. And we also build sub-drivers of each of these equity drivers, and that provides even more granularity. Again, this framework has been widely used and applied by many leading companies worldwide. We also mine Twitter. And why Twitter? Twitter has some very good properties. First of all, it's public. Unlike many, most brands are involved with Twitter, and Twitter handles can usually avoid ambiguity. So for example, if somebody's writing about eating an apple, you don't want that to be picked up as talking about the company Apple. So our utility is based on the drivers. There we have it. The drivers have sub-drivers, and so the idea is we improve one of these drivers, that improves the brand equity, value equity, or relationship equity. That improves the switching matrix for the individual customer. That improves the customer lifetime value, which then improves the customer equity of the firm. So this is the sort of big picture of what's going on with this. So our data that we used were from 3 years. 13,000 total brand week observations. By the way, this is something that you can play with yourself. If you want to go work with these particular data, you can access them. They're available on the Oxford Center for Corporate Reputation website, and I've included the URL here. So anybody who wants to work with these data can. Another thing I heard recently from a researcher who intends to provide a tool online that provides even easier access to this model, and that's not up yet, but that's something to look out for. That should become available soon as well. Okay, here's an example of sort of what comes out of this kind of data. Here we have, for example, Facebook versus Google in 2018. Google being in the red, and Facebook on the blue. This is time as time goes forward, and this is brand reputation here. And we see that the brand reputation Facebook was looking pretty good, and then boom, it goes down because Facebook did some bad things. You may remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That was there are things that we can take a look at and see how they affect the drivers and sub-drivers of customer equity. And we can do that in basically in real time. We could look at this on a weekly or even daily basis if we wished. We can also look at monitoring any of the individual drivers, the relationship driver here, the value driver, et cetera. You can see Facebook has really good relationship driver numbers, but of course that's reasonable because Facebook is by definition a relationship platform. So you'd expect them to be doing very well there. So we can also monitor sub-drivers. So here's some sub-drivers, innovative, exciting, personal relationship, trustworthy, and we can see how they track as well. So looking at these from a theoretical standpoint, we can see that actually the brand driver, value driver, and relationship driver actually all affect each other, which is kind of interesting, but they do it on a different time scale. We also replicated our model on different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouGov, and found that the interrelationships are, for the most part, pretty convergent. So some of the implications for managers, first of all, the brand driver is quickest to impact financials, and the value driver is next quickest. The relationship driver is the slowest. Now you might say, well, that's reasonable, right? Because it takes a while for relationships to play out. So you don't get the financial benefit from a relationship right away. You get it over time. So some conclusions, brand tracking is available in real time. You can do it yourself. We show exactly how to build a model that does that, but you can also play with our data. The data are granular enough to be actionable. It enables longitudinal analysis of the brand reputation drivers. It connects to financial results, and again, you can access the database. Okay, another AI project that I'm involved with is with my former student, Kalinda Yukonwa, now at the University of Southern California. And this is about algorithmic discrimination. We've had some difficulties getting this published to date. I think the one reason is that some people, I think, may not like the idea of discrimination or talking about discrimination. For example, in the United States, some major politicians are saying that they will not permit teaching about, for example, critical race theory to exist in the public schools. The governor of Florida said that. Which means there is a significant segment of people in the United States who just don't want to hear about things like discrimination. They don't want to admit that it ever exists. So, nevertheless, we think this is good work. So let's take a look at some of the problems that algorithmic bias can cause. Algorithmic bias means the algorithms do something that hurts particular groups, and of course we don't want that to happen. So let's take a look at this first note. This was on social media. The Apple Card is such a blank sexist program. My wife and I filed joint tax returns, live in a community property state, and have been married for a long time, yet Apple's black box algorithm thinks I deserve 20 times the credit limit she does. Well, okay, we're talking about well-being. How about well-being of women? Not so good. If you have algorithms that discriminate against women, this is not a good thing. So, under what conditions can algorithms exhibit discrimination? I mean, we thought they were just rational. And does that work differently from humans? Are there different downstream effects on consumer demand, and how does that work? Because let's face it, if discrimination pays, then companies are going to be tempted to discriminate. So one thing that we find useful to talk about is the difference between a group-aware algorithm and a group-blind algorithm. A group-aware algorithm says, oh, okay, we know you're a woman. We know you're African American. We know you're Muslim. we know whatever your group is. We know that, and we're going to use it. We're going to use that information. And on the other hand, a group blind algorithm says, you know, all that stuff about gender and religion and politics and everything like that, we're going to throw all that out. We're not going to include any of that. Sexual orientation, forget it. None of that's going to be even considered. So the question is, what happens when you use a group aware algorithm versus a group blind algorithm? Well, here's what happens. I'm not going to go into each of these graphs in great detail, but the H group is the high status group. The L group is the low status group. And if you take a look at what happens, the probability of loaning a bank loan is greater. If you take a look at any of these points on the horizontal axis, you can see the horizontal axis for the L group. This would be about 65%, whereas for the high group, it would be about 85%. You're definitely getting a benefit from being in one of the high status groups. So on the group blind algorithm, you don't see any of that kind of stuff. You know, they're treating everybody more or less the same. So the question is, how do we know what works and what doesn't? Well, we used an agent-based model. An agent-based model is a simulation-based approach based on very simple assumptions about the actions of individual agents. These are the individual agents within the space. Some of these are in the red group. Some of these are in the green group. You can see. So we play that out, play the simulation out for many rounds to see what happens. And what we find is that in the short run, algorithmic discrimination can actually be profitable. Now that's a concern because we don't want to think about the fact that discrimination actually is something that can pay off to the company. But what we find is that in the long run, that turns around. And so the question is, why does it turn around? And the answer to that is what makes the difference is word of mouth. Word of mouth is driving demand for the group blind. And the reason it does, the group blind competitors are more appealing to the ones in the low status group particularly. And it doesn't hurt the high status group, but it helps the low status group. Okay, so now I want to go into another artificial intelligence paper. This was Artificial Intelligence in Service. This was published in the Journal of Service Research in 2018. It was also fortunate enough to win the Best Article Award there at JSR. And in fact, was the top marketing-related paper in terms of citations from that year. So one thing that we do in this paper is we note that there's really three things that we need to think about. There are jobs, there are tasks, and there are labor. The jobs we might think of as being like a customer manager. The tasks are the things that the customer manager does. So they might form strategies, for example. And then the labor are the people that are actually performing these tasks. So we're considering those three things because what we're going to show is that as AI takes over more of the tasks, it also takes over more of the jobs, and it also replaces labor. So what kind of tasks are there? It's very useful to break this up into three kinds. One is mechanical tasks. These are simple, standard, repetitive sort of things. There are thinking tasks. These are more complex and rule-based, well-defined. Then there are feeling tasks, which are more social and more communicative, more empathetic. And you can see that AI is right now a lot better at some of these things than others. In particular, it's really good at mechanical. It's getting better at thinking, and it's not really all that good at feeling yet. But this is very useful. This division into different kinds of tasks is very useful in giving us insights. Let's take a look at an example, a customer service manager's job. There are mechanical tasks such as doing daily routines the same way every day. Then there are thinking tasks such as analyzing customer preferences, and then there are feeling tasks such as communicating with customers. So the bottom line from this work, and this is also really the main thesis of our book, when AI does the thinking, humans will emphasize feeling. Because what's happening right now is AI is making great advances in thinking tasks, thinking intelligence. And but as it does so, then humans have less need to do that task. And so they need to find something to do. And what humans can do right now better than machines is that they can do the feeling task better. And so that's where people are being driven right now. So again, this is 3 AI intelligences, and this sort of shows how people are changing based on the 3 AI intelligences. With physical intelligence, you can see the big, strong guy is really the key here. This is, if you look at the pre-industrial economy, the big, strong guys were the ones that were in charge, basically. Then as the thinking economy has taken place, you have much more of an emphasis on thinking and less emphasis on physical abilities. And so during this period of time, as the thinking economy has come on board, women have become much more important in the economy because their physical strength disadvantage is no longer as important. And now, as we move to the feeling economy, you can see that what's ultimately going to happen is you're going to develop people with very well-developed feeling skills, but perhaps a little bit less well-developed thinking skills. And you might consider, well, that sounds bad because we're right now in the thinking economy and we can't imagine anything other than thinking being the most important thing. But that's not always going to be true. So what skills will become more important? Analytical skills will soon become less important. Intuition and empathy, which are people skills, will become more important. Then even intuition will eventually become less important. I'm getting noise. If somebody hasn't muted their microphone, please.
Good evening.
Does somebody have a question? Is that what's happening? Yeah, Jan, are you going to moderate those?
I think it was by accident, but so if that person should have a question, simply raise your hand and then I will unmute you. So okay. If anybody has a question, simply raise your hand and I will then actively unmute you so then you can manage that process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jan. So we built this theory of AI job replacement. And this is a formal mathematical theory. It's very simple, but it is formal and it is derived. It can predict how AI will impact human service jobs. And also it will have some implications about the kinds of intelligence that are required for the jobs that are available. So here are the stages of job replacement. Stage 1 is where the mechanical jobs are starting to be replaced. We saw this in the Industrial Revolution and as the early days of AI came up. And then the analytical jobs right now are starting to be taken away. What is still in the future at this point is the intuitive jobs declining and then the empathetic jobs declining. So we're not in really stage 3 and 4 yet, but we're rapidly moving through stage 2 in my view. Okay, so here's what it implies in terms of the relative importance of particular kinds of intelligence for human service providers. Well, this is in relation to, you can see that empathetic is something that increases in importance constantly over time. Analytical, right now, we're in the process of starting to see that decline. Then eventually intuitive will decline. But you can see that the winner from this point of view in terms of how humans will have to compete in the future is empathy and feeling skills. So I do want to point out our recent book, 2021, The Feeling Economy, How Artificial Intelligence is Creating the Era of Empathy. It's a very broad book. It talks about a lot of human and societal issues in addition to business issues. And I would strongly recommend it to you. Let's go into the book a little bit and talk about how this works. We had a mechanical economy, and this was really the old economy before really computers became big. Employment and wages were more attributable to mechanical tasks, things like factory work, mine work, that sort of thing, farming. Mechanical labor is automated by productive technologies, such as the assembly line. But the mechanical economy was really overtaken by the thinking economy decades ago. One of the interesting things that you'll see in the economy as the thinking economy has taken off is that the number of people going to college, for example, has dramatically increased. Even the number of people graduating from high school has dramatically increased over this period of time. And the reason is the mechanical economy is not good enough anymore. You know, people are not going to get that factory job that their grandfather had. They're going to need to figure out a different way to compete, which is, there we go. So the thinking economy is what was next, and that's basically what we're in now. Think about this as being like especially taking place as in the latter half of the 20th century and to date. And thinking workers are more important. So, for example, people who can do STEM skills and program computers and things like that, they're really hot. Mechanical AI is off doing the mechanical stuff, and it's not very sexy anymore. Thinking labor is increasingly automated. So we're seeing machine learning used more and more rather than human learning. Okay. So we're now entering a new economy, which is going to be the feeling economy. And human thinking and analytics will decline in importance, and empathy and emotion are becoming more important. So in the feeling economy, employment and wages are more attributable to feeling tasks than in thinking or mechanical tasks. And that sounds a little crazy to us because we're so used to thinking being king. But that is where we're headed. And so you might ask, how long is that going to take? Well, let's find out. We did a study to try to figure out that issue. And this was a paper that we published in the California Management Review in 2019. We took a look at some government data, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment. My clicker is no longer working, moving the slides. I'm having to do it with the roller, which is very inaccurate. I'm hoping that works. So this is empirical validation with US government ONET data. And we looked at 812 jobs with 41 standard tasks. And in each of those jobs, the importance of each of the 41 tasks was rated for each job. So we can get a sense as to what matters in each of the jobs. But not only that, we can take a look at how that's changing over time. And that turns out to be very important to do. So first of all, we have to separate the tasks because we're using our worldview of three different kinds of intelligence: the physical intelligence, the thinking intelligence, the feeling intelligence. Then we have to sort these tasks into those categories. So for example, with thinking, you have examples like processing information. With feeling, you have things like assisting and caring for others. For physical, you have performing general physical activities or handling and moving objects. You get the idea. So by separating this into the three intelligence levels, we were able to get insights about the intelligence levels. So here's the relative importance of the task intelligences to jobs in 2016. You can see, again, I said we were in the thinking economy. You can see that reflected here. the thinking tasks are more important than the feeling tasks and much more important than the physical tasks. But now let's take a look at the change in intelligence importance from 2006 to 2016. Here we start to see what's really going on. The feeling tasks are greatly increasing in importance, whereas thinking tasks are more or less staying the same in importance. Physical tasks are becoming even less important than they were. So this is this shows that we're really entering the feeling economy. And if we take a look at even very technical sorts of jobs like financial managers or personal financial advisors, I guess you can see that. I mean, we even did this for statisticians. We did it for accountants. They come up with the same kind of thing. You see the same kind of pattern. The feeling tasks are becoming more important in those jobs. So one thing that we notice is that when lower intelligence is de-emphasized, higher intelligence is emphasized. So for example, in the old mechanical physical economy, you have the big strong guys who can do heavy physical work. And now a lot of the heroes of the thinking economy are people who may not be strong physically at all, but are very, very smart. And so that is, you can see that as the thinking intelligence is emphasized, the physical intelligence is de-emphasized. And we're going to see exactly the same thing when the feeling economy moves more online. We're going to see thinking tasks becoming de-emphasized and feeling tasks becoming emphasized more. So here's the total employment change from 2006 to 2016. And you can see that both thinking and feeling employment is growing pretty dramatically over this period. But if you take a look at what is actually being paid for, the feeling tasks are getting bigger wage increases than thinking tasks. And typically that happens when supply and demand is telling the wages what to do. So you have supply and demand. There's not enough supply of feeling intelligence, and there's a lot of demand for it. Therefore, the wage for feeling intelligence is going up. So we're heading toward the feeling economy. And some of the parts of the feeling economy that we think are going to grow the most are some of these growing feeling sectors that we noticed in our data: personal care and service, business and financial operations, community and social service, healthcare, and management. So these are some of the growing sectors that are going to be even more important in the coming years. So based on a linear extrapolation, we project that the feeling economy would fully overtake the thinking economy by 2036. In other words, that's when the feeling tasks will be more important on average than thinking tasks in the economy. And that's not very many years from now. And it's been estimated that AI will be capable of both cognition and common sense reasoning within the next 20 or 30 years. Now, it's still decades, but we're you can see that would basically drive humans almost completely out of thinking intelligence and all the way into feeling intelligence. So this is something to be concerned about. For those of you who plan to be alive in 30 years, this is something you need to think about.
Roland, we have one question which
Yes.
leads directly to this aspect, and we have a couple of other questions more linked to the prior studies. So if you maybe would like to comment on the last one, so the question is, where does creativity fit into the physical thinking feeling categories?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about creativity later. So if I can, I'd like to hang on to that because I will talk directly to that.
Great. And there are some questions related, for example, Bart, would you like maybe ask the question yourself?
Yes, I think my question also relates to Khalid's question, is one of my PhD students. So Roland, you talked about papers and studies you have done and that already published. So they are already some years ago. So I just wonder about the dynamics. For example, when you consider your adaptive personalization system, the findings you found there, do you think they are to the same extent still applicable, or are there new challenges that needs to be incorporated, maybe linked to well-being or restrictions or regulations and so forth?
Yeah, I think the key word there is regulations part. I mean, in Europe, for example, there are very strict regulations about how people can use, how businesses can use individual level information. And so that would be a big concern. So one of the things that I am currently working on is how to deal with privacy. In other words, how to personalize with privacy. And that is a very difficult thing, but it's something that I'm actively thinking about. So, but I think the regulation issue is pretty important. And ideally, what the company needs to learn how to do is to personalize for its customers without actually knowing their personal information. And that sounds crazy. It sounds impossible, but yeah. I believe it should be possible to do.
Maybe if they can opt in for it and know they are informed that they may be into it.
Oh, yeah. Well, if people opt in, then you're done. But if they won't opt in, then you'd still like to be able to personalize for them.
Yeah, thank you, Roland.
And maybe there's one more question I would briefly like to ask Jim Sporer. Agent-based modeling is a powerful tool for exploring relationships and interactions between entities. How do you see this use of ABM in service research, past, present, and future?
Yeah, ABM is a controversial technique because it's a simulation technique. And a lot of the people that are in our field of business are sort of standard mainstream econometrician types. And they tend to want to do things either empirically with regression models, or they want to derive things analytically. And the simulation approach is a different approach. It's an approach that starts with simple assumptions and then tries to figure out what emerges from those simple assumptions dynamically over time. My viewpoint, I'll do a very simple thought experiment here. Consider a simple economic input model where you have two inputs. One input is analytical modeling, and another input is simulation. Now think about analytical modeling and how that's changing over time. It's not changing at all over time. You know, people pull out their pen and paper and they do an analytical model. They do it the same way today that they did it in 1930. So it just doesn't matter. So on the other hand, consider the cost of computation. Now, we all know that the cost of computation is dramatically declining. So what simple economic modeling tells you is that if the cost of an input goes down, you use more of that input. So it's absolute certainty that we will be seeing more computational work and less analytical work in the future. And the computational work that is the most ambitious is simulation work. And that is, I believe, why simulations like agent-based modeling are going to be much more important in the future. Any other questions, or should I move on?
I think we can move on now.
Okay.
Jim says thank you.
Yeah, that was a good question. So how do we manage in the feeling economy? Well, first of all, we have to think of AI and human workers as a team. That's an important thing. And then emphasize feeling intelligence and people skills for employees. And that is totally counter to what people are thinking right now. We need to be responsive to consumers' emotional needs. We need to make sure that our business becomes more feeling oriented in general. And we want to investigate the intelligence composition of jobs. And for educators, which many of us are, we really need to increase the amount of education that we have on emotional intelligence and people skills and communication, maybe at the expense of STEM skills. Now, there are still going to be, of course, there are going to need to still be some people who do STEM skills, but basically they're going to be the people who are at the very top. They're going to be the most talented people. So, for example, you don't need everybody doing mathematical proofs. You just need the very smartest mathematicians in the world doing mathematical proofs. Okay, let's take a look now at how this fits into management. This is a paper called The Strategic Framework for Artificial Intelligence in Marketing. And this was published in JAMS in 2021. It was also fortunate enough to win the Best Article Award at JAMS. Oops. Okay, there we go. So here's sort of our wheel that we think is important here. From marketing action to marketing research to marketing strategy, back to marketing action again. Now, the marketing action, you can see standardization is really more a mechanical thing. But personalization really requires analysis and thinking. And relationalization really requires feeling. And this of course affects how we do marketing research. So, for example, if we're going to try to get at customer understanding for the purpose of understanding them better, we really are going to need feeling AI that works, or we're going to need to supplement that with humans that can do that part. And then the marketing strategy part, we have segmentation, targeting, positioning, et cetera. So there's a lot more detail in that paper. I don't have time to go into all of it, but okay. Then I want to talk about a framework for collaborative artificial intelligence in marketing. This is published in the Journal of Retailing just recently. And what this is getting at is this idea that we're going to have teams, that AI and humans are going to be teams, and how should they team up? And so what we need to do, I'm just going to give you the real bottom line here. We need to consider the intelligence level required. So the idea is to have the humans do the intelligence levels that they're best suited for, have the AI do the intelligence levels that's best suited for, and realize that although people are saying, well, AI can do this, but AI can't do that. Every time I read a paper that says something like that, I think they don't know what they're talking about, because this is a moving target. AI's capabilities are changing over time. They're becoming more and more advanced over time. And as AI advances, whatever human advantages currently exist may not exist anymore in the future. And so how best to collaborate is actually a moving target. And that would be the number one thing I would point out, is that we can't assume everything's going to be the same 5 years from now as it is now. In fact, but we know which direction things are going to move. It's going to move in the direction of AI doing more thinking tasks and eventually more feeling tasks. So let me now talk about an additional study. This is AI as Customer. This was published in the Journal of Service Management in 2022. I actually wrote something in 1997 that pointed to this, but I won't talk about that paper today. But let's talk about the AI as Customer. In one of the things that we see a lot today is AI service. So you have a customer AI agent versus a service provider AI agent. A lot of this happens in the IoT world, Internet of Things. But you also see it online every day. So for example, if you want to advertise in Google, chances are you're going to have your bot talk to their bot, and that's going to be how the advertising is set up. So so very often we're dealing with these days AI agents, and it's not just always Alexa or Siri. It can be lots of things. It can be your IoT, your autonomous car, your smart home, etc. So so AI customers are becoming more and more commonplace, and we need to start thinking about them. Stop thinking about the customer necessarily being human. So how do we research the AI customer? Well, there are a couple of main approaches. The sort of most popular approach that seems to have been used in the past is reverse engineering. We try to figure out how the algorithm works. We try to figure that out. So you know, the problem is, as the AI algorithms become more complicated, it's more difficult to reverse engineer them. And in fact, the explainability problem is a huge problem in AI, especially with deep learning neural networks. So, I propose a different approach to researching the AI customers, and that is basically using an approach similar to what we use for human consumer behavior. Let's take a look for regularities in behavior. How does the AI consumer behave, and can we draw generalizations about that? So the future AI customer may be even, of course, more advanced and different. So, for example, you may have AI-enhanced consumers. You know, you may have consumers who are physically integrated with AI or biologically integrated with AI, and that in other words, they become a hybrid, and they're not just totally human or totally AI anymore. And then, of course, there's the truly autonomous AI customer. And the truly AI customer is a customer that's working for itself. It's not even working for a human anymore. It's not even working necessarily for a business. It's on its own. Now that sounds a little creepy and futuristic, but there's no reason why that kind of consumer can't exist. So some of the directions for future research. First of all, what are the primary benefits from AI customers? You know, AI customers wouldn't be used if they didn't provide benefits. So let's figure out where those benefits come from and how they can be maximized. Which customers can benefit most? Of course, there are obvious cases like somebody who is quadriplegic may benefit tremendously from AI, having AI be a customer for them. Which tasks are best delegated to AI customers? And under what conditions will humans grant control to AI? All these are important issues that need to be investigated. For service providers, first of all, do service providers benefit from AI customers, and under what conditions? Again, there's a list of possible research projects here. Okay, now I'd like to. I'm almost done here. Almost done. I've got a few more minutes, but I have a couple of things that I want to make sure that I need to hit. That's based on the feeling economy. One is that employees need to be more feeling oriented. So if we're hiring employees, it's not just whether they're good analytically and whether they got good grades or whatever. It can be whether they actually have the ability to empathize with their customers. And one of the reasons this is important is that consumers are also becoming more feeling oriented. You might say, why are the consumers becoming more feeling oriented? I thought that was a business thing. Well, it is, except that you notice that this woman has an AI in her hand. Now, we don't think of it as an AI, but basically that's what it is, right? It's an AI device. And so she is using that device to do a lot of her work for her. So if she needs calculations done or something, she can do that easily on there. If she wants communication, she can do that. It does a lot of things. because it's doing all those thinking things, she really can be more feeling oriented. And also, if you think about what's going on that device, more than anything else, it's probably social media. Well, what's social media? It's an opportunity to interact in a feeling way with other people. Now, one of the things that this trend means is that probably this is going to be an era for women. Women may have comparative advantages, such as empathy and people skills, on average. Now, again, there are huge differences intragender, but there are also important differences between genders that are statistically significant and big enough to be important managerially. And you see some people actually reacting badly to that. So, for example, one of Donald Trump's picks for the Federal Reserve said the biggest problem to the U.S. economy is declining male earnings. Okay, so this is implying that he doesn't like the fact that that women are doing better in the economy. He thinks this is a threat to men. Another kind of funny thing to point out here is the idea of the emoji. I mean, probably everybody's aware of these. They use them on their smartphones all the time. The emoji came out of something called the emoticon. And the emoticon, interestingly enough, was invented by the man who got the first AI Ph.D. at his university. So in other words, one of the first AI PhDs, he's the guy who invented the emoticon. Why? Because there's this inherent link between thinking tasks, such as on the computer, and feeling, which gets lost sometimes. So as you get cold, rational thinking invading, you have to counteract it. And you counteract it with emotional expression. And so that was his insight, that he could see that there was going to need to be more emotional expression expressed in the computing world. And that's why emoji came up. Now, here's the question about creativity. The idea that creativity is all human is just nuts. And if we take a look at an example, this is the example of modern popular music. If we take a look at modern popular music, well, how is it usually made? Well, if you take a look at the left side, you can see that there are synthesizers and computers, and basically that stuff is all being programmed. So that's basically the thinking AI that's involved with the song. And on the right side, you see the human reaction to that, because these synthesizer programmed musical expressions can sound very cold. And so how do you take that and counteract it? Well, you counteract it by being even more emotional than you would be as a singer. And so here's a guy with very emotional looking makeup. He's got a very emotional expression. This is how a lot of popular music is happening right now, is that you have the coldness of the mechanical side being counteracted by the warmth of the human feeling side. And that's the kind of collaboration that we're seeing more and more in art. And in also in things like advertising. So you have AI created TV commercials that exist now, and by and large they don't work yet, because they don't connect as well to the feeling side as they need to. Okay, so some implications for marketing education, since many of us are educators. First of all, I think it's questionable these analytics programs everybody's putting in right now. I think it's the wrong timing. You're late to the game. We may be need to create programs that emphasize people skills more, because that's where the demand is going to be. And we also need to realize that this is going to perhaps imply more importance for women in education. And marketers should study irrationality and emotion more. And we're seeing more and more irrational stuff all the time, especially in social media. So we better get used to it. So implications for managers: first of all, recruit for people skills, not analytics. Now, sure, there will be some analytical jobs that are required, but fewer than before. Create new jobs that emphasize feeling intelligence, and transform the existing jobs to be more feeling oriented. So some additional implications: first of all, politics with empathy. Politicians that are succeeding with empathy. I think that's how Donald Trump won in 2016, because he was the only one that indicated the pain of the people who are leaving the mechanical economy, the physical economy. But that's also why Biden won in 2020, because at that point he came across as a very legitimately empathetic individual. Inequality of wealth, I believe, is potentially going to be worse, and that's something for us to worry about. The reason that inequality of wealth would be worse is that AI is capital. Therefore, the people who own the AI are the capitalists. They're not the laborers. So in other words, this AI implies a shift of resources from labor to capital. And that means more inequality of wealth, because the capitalists tend to be the ones that own the capital. Human atrophy is another potential thing to worry about. As people's thinking skills get worse, what does that mean? Also, robot rights. If there are AI programs that are very complex and can think, and in fact, Google had somebody that claimed that one of their AIs was conscious. He got immediately replaced, but that was because Google didn't want to scare everybody. But this is something we're going to have to start thinking about. Also, liability issues. I mean, obviously, if you're in an autonomous car and the autonomous car runs over somebody, is that the driver's fault, or is it the car's fault, or is it the manufacturer's fault? Whose fault is it? And then, of course, we've got the doomsday scenario, which I won't go into too much because it'll scare everybody. But okay, we're moving toward hybrid humans. Ray Kurzweil, the guy who came up with the concept of the singularity, said we are going to be a hybrid. And this has already started. If you take a look at, there are a lot of devices out there that basically connect people to computers. And in 2017, scientists for the first time connected the brain to the internet. So, you can now control things on the internet just with your brain. So the quadriplegic can do a lot of things that he or she couldn't do before. Of course, one thing to be worried about if you start connecting brains to the internet is, what if everybody's brain gets connected to the internet? You have an internet of brains. Who can control that? Suppose you could now control everybody's brain. What would happen then? I think this is something to be concerned about. And also take a look at Elon Musk's Neuralink. One of the things Elon Musk has done is he put pigs on the internet. Okay, now you might say, what's the value of a pig on the internet? I don't know, but anyway, the idea is that even a pig's brain can run things on the internet. So to conclude, first of all, the thinking economy will soon become the feeling economy, and the feeling economy will change what we do and who we are. So again, there's our book, and there's the scary photo or picture from the great Norwegian artist. Okay, so thanks very much, and I'll take any questions.